Hello and welcome back to the 4th episode of Across the Wave, where we fill you in on everything Delbarton sports that you missed over the past week and highlight some pro and college sports. I'm Lorenzo Scola, joined by Ryan Dooley, and we have a ton to talk about today.
Yeah, and we're going to start off with football as always. Football team had a great win this weekend against their rivals, Seton Hall Prep, 28-7 in a great matchup on Saturday. The students section had a great showing, and overall just a great day for the Green Wave. This is the third year in a row that Delbarton has had the best of Seton Hall in this football matchup, and both teams scored early in the second quarter, and then a great 2-minute drill from Delbarton's offense resulted in a 42-yard touchdown pass to Grant Van Rapp, giving Delbarton a 14-7 lead at halftime. They added on 2 more touchdowns in the second half, 1 more to Grant Van Rapp, and it's really good to see this offense going without Xavier Rodriguez and Jack Castellano. Seeing how Grant Van Rapp really picked up the targets is a great sign for this Delbarton offense, who hasn't had much passing success before that game against Seton Hall. Additionally, there was a great day on defense too, with Michael Silvani being a definite standout for the Green Wave, and it's just a great way to get in the win column again as they go into some away matchups.
Yeah, definitely an all-around great win by the team. Yeah, now we're going to highlight some key performances, starting off with the backfield. Austin Kelly had 14 carries for 39 yards. Kobe Mason ran for 170 on 26 attempts. He's really emerged as a great running back for the Green Wave. He's up to 444 yards on the year. Grant Van Rapp has 5 touchdowns on the year. He picked up 2, as you mentioned, and he had that 76-yard touchdown. What a beauty. A great throw from Gavin Gallardi, who threw for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. Luke McBride picked up a sack, so did Michael Scafani, who also had an interception on a tip pass. And then freshman QB Jaden Schmaltz and Matthew Tafiri both had rushing touchdowns as well. Seton Hall's lone score came from Leonard West. 28-7 was the final score of that one.
Yeah, and they're going to have 2 tough away games now going into the rest of their schedule. This weekend, on October 4th, they're going to be facing Pope John at away. And this is going to be a big matchup for the Green Wave, a big test, their first major in-state away game. So it's going to be a big test for the Green Wave. Hopefully they can get back to 3-3 before they'll have a bye week. And then after that, they'll be taking on Bergen Catholic at Bergen. That's going to be a huge game as well. Bergen obviously coming off the huge loss to Don Bosco. Major upset for them, 14-9. Bergen Catholic previously the 14th team in the nation. But after that loss to Don Bosco, they'll likely fall, with Don Bosco taking the number 1 team in the state.
Yeah, and if they could go 500 into that bye week and pick up a win against Pope John this week, that would be great for the Green Wave to finally build some momentum with 2 straight wins before they face a tough opponent in Bergen Catholic. Yeah, and now we're going to discuss some soccer for the Green Wave, who started their season off hot but has not had the best last 3 games. Starting with the Delbarton Invitational, they fell to the number 5 team in the state, St. Augustine, 2-0. St. Augustine was really just playing great defense. Their goalie was making save after save. They didn't get many chances in the first half, but they definitely had plenty in the second chance. And unfortunately, they just couldn't convert on any. Then on Sunday, they tied with Chaminade 2-2. Cortland Martin scored early on, and then Liam Murphy had a game-tying score in the last minute. They lost to their rivals Mendham, who they previously beat in the opener 3-2. They picked up a 2-1 lead early on with 2 goals from freshman Matthew Brusco, but then star player for Mendham, Valianatos, he hit the game-winning goal with 1:20 seconds left to go. So unfortunate 3-game outing here for the Green Wave. Prior to that, though, they had won the last 46 games against Morris County teams, so definitely a stunner. And they're just a little bit banged up right now. Marcus Arthur with an ankle injury. They're still trying to work in Owen Miller back into the lineup after he suffered an injury. But some key points for them is Cortland Martin is now up to 7 goals on the season, Liam Murphy with 4. Delbarton has to move past this, and I know they will, because they have that great coaching staff and head coach in Dr. Donovan.
Yeah, and you mentioned Marcus Arthur and working back in Owen Miller, but they also lost Henry Kovacs, a vital piece of that Delbarton midfield too, with a left arm injury. Hopefully they'll have him back soon, and the big key is just getting everyone healthy, make sure they're always playing at full strength going forward. And as for their future schedule, they'll be playing Randolph tomorrow, which as we're recording this will be October 1st, and then they'll take on Chatham October 9th, and then Roxbury on the 11th. They'll have a few more games after that before they'll pick up in the Morris County tournament, which the Green Wave look to win again, and then they'll move on to states. So playoff action in soccer is coming sooner than you think.
Yeah, and just a little outside note, St. Benedict's tied with St. Peter's 1-1, so that was big because the number one team in the nation. St. Peter's had a 1-0 lead early, but then St. Benedict's tied it. And as you mentioned, their stretch coming up against these Morris County teams are a little bit tough, with Randolph being 8-3 and Chatham being 6-2.
Yeah, and as for cross country, as we're filming this, they're going in another dual meet against Morris County competition in Morris Knolls and Mendham. Which is going to be a great test for this young team. Morris Knolls has a great cross country program. Hopefully they'll get 2 more wins today. And then they'll also be competing in the Shore Coaches Invitational this Saturday, and that will be at Homedale.
And now we're going to talk about the sub-varsity schedule a little bit. So over the weekend, early Saturday morning, the freshman football team fell to Seton Hall 20-0, and they are now 1-3 on the season. They will also play Pope John this upcoming weekend. JV football picked up its second straight win, 19-14 versus Seton Hall. And JV soccer is now 5-2 after winning 2 versus Don Bosco and Mount Olive 4-1, but they did fall at Chaminade 2-0 and beat Mendham 2-1. Freshman soccer, they picked up 3 wins last week, but lost to Chaminade 2-0. In Mendham, they beat 3-1. So junior varsity and freshmen were able to beat Mendham, but unfortunately varsity couldn't get it done. But no levels got a win against Chaminade this weekend.
Yeah, strong program out of Chaminade as for soccer. And we also have some recruitment news also in the class of 2027. Ted Messino of the baseball squad commits to Maryland for the class of 2027. He had a great year last season, called up to varsity mid-season and had a solid role in the offense. He hit .318 and 22 at-bats and also proved to be a great arm, and he's been clocked up to 90 miles per hour off the mound.
Yeah, great news for him and for the class of 2027, as well as they're awaiting the number 1 player in the state for the 2027 class, Finn O'Loughlin. And now we're going to talk about some pro football. The Vikings fell short of a comeback against the Steelers in Ireland and ultimately lose that game 27-24. The Bucks also could not come back against the Eagles as they went down 21-6, but they made a comeback in the second half as the Eagles went 0-8 passing to start the second half. Unfortunately, they lost 31-23. They face the rested Seahawks in what should be a great game as both teams are 3-1 next week. The Ravens, they're ranked first in offense, but their defense is ranked 32nd, not really having a good season, and they picked up more injuries. Roquan Smith with a hamstring, Marlon Humphrey with a hamstring, and Nanri Matabuke is out for the season with a neck injury. So not good, as they had an ugly outing versus the Chiefs. The Colts had a costly fumble by Adonai Mitchell, their receiver, and a costly hold penalty that outed a 56-yard run by Jonathan Taylor, and they ultimately lost the game due to that. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions against the Jaguars, and they lose to the Jags, who are looking pretty good this season. Geno Smith and the Raiders are not looking good, though. They're 1-3 after a blocked field goal cost them the game against the Bears. Geno Smith with another 3 interception game. Not very good from him this season, who only has 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I'm happy that my Seahawks moved on, but at least Genti finally went off. And Puka Nacua had another great game. He's up to 500 yards on the season. And what do you want to say about that Packers game? That was a great game Sunday night.
Yeah, just a shootout in Sunday Night Football between the Packers and the Cowboys. Another costly special teams mistake by the Packers early in the game, though. This is the second straight week they've had a field goal blocked. Their second touchdown had their blocked extra kick, which was returned by the Cowboys for a 2-point conversion for them, which proved to be the difference as the game went into overtime and ended up in a 40-40 tie. So really some problems when we saw at the end of last season too, with some problems in extra points and field goals with those getting blocked. Also the Giants, they give the first start to Jackson Dart, and it looks like a new era in New York as Jackson Dart leads the Giants to their first win of the season.
Yeah, and you did mention that special teams against the Packers last week when they lost, or 2 weeks ago when they lost to the Browns. So yeah, just another mistake. But the Giants do look good. Unfortunately, some key injuries for them. Malik Neighbors tore an ACL. That MetLife turf is no joke. And also Tyreek Hill had a graphic knee dislocation injury. He tore multiple ligaments in his leg. So not good for both those key receivers for both their teams.
Now, as for college football, we saw an absolutely great slate of games this Saturday. Virginia opened it up with an electric win over 8th-ranked Florida State with a win in overtime with one of the best field rushes I've ever seen. They'll move up to 24th in the AP poll, while Florida State's going to drop to 16th. Illinois gets the upset against USC with a last-second game-winning field goal, and which will move them to 22nd in the AP poll. And Ole Miss pulls off the upset over LSU in a big top 15 matchup, and the two will switch places, LSU dropping to 13th and Ole Miss rising up to 4th. Alabama rolls past Georgia 24-21, breaking Georgia's 33-game win streak at home. Very impressive performance from the Alabama offense, especially from their quarterback Ty Simpson, especially in that first half. Huge win for Alabama to get back on track. Oregon also overpowered the Penn State whiteout in a chess match. Penn State had 2 huge touchdowns in the fourth quarter to tie the game, sending it to overtime after it went into half only 6-6. Both teams scored the first time around in overtime, but in second overtime, after Oregon scored on their attempt, Drew Aller threw a costly interception, which will seal the game for the Ducks, which is going to propel them to second ranked in the nation.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just happy that my Buckeyes are doing good this season. And now, as we did last week, we're both going to pick a fantasy player that we will think will do good and be a good pickup for this upcoming week and this rest of the season. And my choice is Romeo Doubs. He really has emerged as the receiver one for Jordan Love. Christian Watson and Jaden Reed both banged up, and he picked up 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys and just was Jordan Love's go-to target. And they have a bye week this upcoming week, but they have matchups against the Bengals, Steelers, and Cardinals, who all rank last in passing allowed. So I think he will really thrive in those soft zones and soft defenses.
Yeah, as for my pick, I'm going to go with Darius Slayton of the New York Giants. He's barely on any fantasy rosters as of now, only around 3%. And with that injury to Malik Neighbors, he really has the opportunity to take a larger role in this offense. We saw Jackson Dart get the start at QB and a strong Giants passing offense as a result. And with Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 1, being out, I think a huge target share could start to go to Darius Slayton. He could fill a bigger role in this offense, definitely have a high upside for a bench spot. And today's the 30th, which means playoff baseball is here. We have the full postseason picture now for the MLB playoffs, starting off with Detroit versus Cleveland in the AL wildcard. Winner of that will go on to face Seattle. And then it will be Boston Red Sox versus New York Yankees, a huge rivalry in that AL wildcard game. New York has the home advantage. Winner will face Toronto in the ALDS. Then on the NL side, we have the Dodgers versus the Reds. Dodgers having home field advantage. Winner of that will go to Philly to take on the Phillies. And then my Cubs have home field advantage against the San Diego Padres. And winner is going to take on the Brewers in the NLDS. And that's all starting today as we're recording this, which is September 30th. Going forward, I love playoff baseball. It's going to be electric October. Great matchups. All of these teams hunting for a World Series. We had a great row of sports lined up for this October.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely nice for Seattle fans to have, their football team doing good and their baseball team. Some scheduling conflicts might be coming up because Seattle has propelled in baseball. That will do it, though, for Lorenzo Scola, the 4th episode of Across the Wave, joined by Ryan Dooley.
Yep, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.